Asynchronous programming is really important, and with the advent of the async capabilities and the async syntax within .NET, it makes it so much cleaner. I'm going to show you a simple example of using this pattern within an ASP.NET application.
I want to show you actually two different examples of asynchronous programming and how easy it is in the .NET framework. The first is going to be a very basic demonstration of async and await using a command line application, a console application. And then the other would be to show you how easy it would be to use asynchronous methods in a web application. So to start out with, I've got a very simple demonstration little program here. It's just a console application. The first thread sleep you'll notice there into main is really just so I can make sure that I can get the console from my primary screen up to my demo screen, honestly. Then I write just a line out to the process start. Then I've got a method that's going to be asynchronous. It's not right now. I'll show you first how it runs synchronously. And then after that, it's just simply going to write done and wait for an enter key to close. All right. Now the run async right now is not asynchronous. It will be. So I open up a web client. I write out a line. And then I use the client to open one of the pages from a web app that I've used in previous demonstrations. Then I just simply read from it, and I'm throwing a thread sleep in there just to simulate a lengthy wait. That's only 2 seconds, shouldn't be too bad. All right, and then I use it, I pull some data from it, and then outside of that stream, I have a console write line with the code after the await. So when all of this is said and done, here's what we see. That's a 5 minute. All right, so it starts a process, runs the code before the await, waits for those couple seconds, and then you see the first line, the code after the await, and the fact that it's done. Okay, now I'm going to transform this to be asynchronous. Now, if I was writing this without the async await, this would be fairly complex. In this case, it's actually very simple. First, I mark the method to be asynchronous, and it's going to yell at me a little bit when I put that in there because it's going to tell me that I don't have the await anywhere. And then you're going to make a call to some asynchronous process. Now, OpenRead is not asynchronous, but I'm going to put the async in there, or I'm going to put the await in there anytime I'm going to make a call to an asynchronous process. Now, as soon as I do that, it's going to yell at me. It's going to tell me that's not asynchronous. But if I use OpenRead task async, then everything is okay. So I've now added the keyword async. I've now added the keyword await, and I'm calling a method that is in fact asynchronous. The rest of my code stays the same. Everything after that await is going to run on that other thread. It's going to await the process, but then everything that's not under that is going to run normally. So now when I run this, still has that initial wait, just so I could get that up there. Notice, all right, so it starts a process, it runs the code before the await, and then notice the done runs before the 2 lines that are in the asynchronous process. And that is your basic kind of standard demonstration of asynchronous processing and how easy that is to implement in general in .NET code. All right, now, if I wanted to add this to a web application, let's say in particular if I wanted to use this with an MVC app, I can come in to controllers, and I'm going to add a new controller, and we'll go a web app to OData controller with read-write actions, and notice right here, use async controller actions. And we'll just go ahead and pick up some. We'll use student, doesn't really matter. And I've already got a student, so that's fine. And I'll pause this while it's generating that. And here is the asynchronous controller. So I create a controller. Now I used an OData controller just because I was lazy there. But I've got my OData controller, and here is the asynchronous element of it. It's public async, the task, get students 1. Now it's going to yell at me as my example did when I used the console application saying, I've got an async, but nowhere in here do I have an await, right? And so then I can just add that code in. And the really cool thing is that my code is going to be the same, as I would write it if it weren't asynchronous, right? I just need that await in there. It just becomes extremely easy to implement an asynchronous architecture. If you've ever coded asynchronously without this, you know that there's some complexity in the way that you have to work with it. And that's where that async and await has become so powerful within the .NET framework.
That pattern is available across any type of .NET application. So if you're in the .NET environment and you're considering asynchronous programming, but you're not really comfortable with the complexities that adds in, this is a great way to kind of get the best of both worlds. Relatively easy to do, still very powerful, still giving you that asynchronous programming capabilities.